Everybody, welcome to That GD Show.
That song's a bop. Can we just go back to that? That was awesome.
Right? Thank you. It is a bop. Yeah. We honestly, every time Dave is on the show, he makes a joke about it being a bop, like right off the bat. As you can tell, Dave is not here, but have no fears, everybody. He is alive and well, doing great. He is actually having the time of his life in Europe. So he will be back next week, I hope and I pray to nobody, but he promised. Anywho, my lovely guests, of course, Captain Dadpool. Wonderful to see you, as always. My homie.
Thanks for having me.
And my new friend, Puck.
You know, it's a pleasure to be here for the first time.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, I feel like when Dave and I first started this show, or when we first started talking about it, we thought maybe we would do it every month or every 2 weeks or so, because we were afraid that we would run out of guests after a while. And like, we have not whatsoever. We have like basically a year planned out of awesome people. And I'm so excited that you are one of said people.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so interesting because if we go back even just a few years, like 5 or 6 years, we could probably name all the major atheist YouTubers, for example, on two hands and still have fingers left over. And now it's great that the community has just opened up and blossomed to the extent that it has, not just for the people who show up on camera, right? But as I'm looking at the chat here, I'm seeing a lot of familiar names that I've seen in a lot of chats elsewhere, right? And as much as, like, I get it, I'm eye candy, that's why they put me on here a lot. It's you guys that make the community, because you guys are engaging in a lot more places than we're able to. So it's fantastic how huge this has gotten.
That sounds like a really great topic to discuss tonight.
Segue. How about that?
Yeah, maybe we could get into that a little bit.
I know. I think that we should and we ought to. But first, I will get all the boring YouTube stuff out of the way. Like, subscribe, please. I don't really know what it does, but it at least just makes me feel better about myself. So thank you so much. Secondly, the show is a call-in show. So if you would like to talk to us and not just watch our beautiful faces, then you can call 217-375-9933. Lines are open. I'm watching them as best as I can. And we have incredible call screeners that are just waiting to hear all about you and make sure that we don't talk to you if you're super weird. And also, Greg Murkowski, $19.99 every week. Oh my goodness. It really does just like make my night every Monday when I see your first super chat come in. I think you've only been beat to the punch once. So no slack in there. I am totally kidding. I was going to say, I think that's all of my YouTube housekeeping out of the way, except I did just remember that we have a trivia competition going on, where I'm going to ask you guys watching a question that you will only know the answer to if you have read, drumroll, Childish Things by Dave Warnock. So the winner of this week's trivia will get a mug. In fact, Captain Dadpool, you were the winner last week.
I was.
Yes, and you will get your mug. I will say there's probably going to be a delay because
my head is bleeding.
Your head is bleeding. I'm sorry
about that, y'all. I don't know what's going on.
That's
right.
okay. Remember that time that I jumped on to interview Bart Ehrman and I just got attacked by a dog? So, like, my
That's
whole
right.
hand
You
was
did get attacked
bleeding.
by a dog. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's payback time.
I know. It's
Right.
amazing
Sorry,
that
guys.
that is okay. I'm just glad that I'm not the only person that is just
Trying to
bled
hide that. I'm
profusely
gonna
at a
turn my head
show.
a little bit.
That's okay. You're lucky you don't have, like, one good side or another. What was I doing?
Stop it.
I know. Shucks. Okay. Really quick, the trivia question for this week. I hope Dave hasn't done it before. I totally did pull this out of my butt. But when Dave went to get a job that wasn't in the church, what fun fair food did he help popularize in the 1980s?
Oh
You
my
can
God, I
blame
can
him
answer
for
this
so many
right off of the bat.
I know. It's an easy one this week. It's so memorable.
This is an easy one.
I don't even have a guess. It's State Fair and Town Festival season here.
You could
in
probably
Cincinnati,
guess and get the right answer.
Oh,
okay.
Ironclad Alibi. You were not the first answer, but you were the first correct one. So
There
it
we
was
go.
funnel
Okay.
cakes. Yeah, if oh, and there's a lot of good guesses that are now just making me really hungry for
I don't even know what fried road apples are, but I want to look that up. That sounds interesting enough to look at.
That does sound good.
I don't know. I just know that I want to eat it right now. I don't
I'm
care
a big
what it
fan
is.
of fried Oreos. Those are pretty. Oh,
Oh yeah. They're the best.
it's
Okay.
not fair.
Well,
Yeah.
Ironclad Alibi. I should have asked if you're in the continental United States. Because if you are, we will be shipping you a mug as soon as Dave is back from not the continental United States. So bear with us, but I will make a note of that you are getting that mug. And Captain Dadpool, I might just have Dave send me 2 mugs, and then I can just like take the other one over to
Yeah,
your
we'll
house.
have to do a
Like, come
meetup
over.
somewhere because we live very close to each other.
This is true.
We'll have to meet up at like maybe a pretzel place or something in Hagerstown.
Yeah, something like that. A place
We
with
keep talking about.
I know, pretzels and pizzas, all the creations.
Yeah. But
So
every time I have funnel cake now, I immediately think of Dave.
right?
Like my town has a carnival or a circus type thing every year, and I go and we get funnel cake, and I'm like, Dave helped make this happen.
I know.
Like,
It's so crazy. I mean, it's I was born in 1993, so I do remember a time before computers and cell phones being incredibly popular, but I can't imagine a time when you would go to a county fair and you would see a plate of funnel cake and you'd be like, "Oh, what is this?" And that is a time that Dave knows, and he answered that question for millions of people across the country.
yeah, it's weird. Like, how did you network back then? Like, I was born in '86. I remember a time before the internet, but I still can't fathom a time where you just like call a carnival and be like, "Hey, I'm coming to your carnival and I'm going to make shit and sell it and you're going to deal with it." How did that work back then?
You're not going to
weird.
know what it is, but you are going to know that it's fried. And
Trust me, you're going to love it.
You know what? Since we're dropping years, let's just go ahead and say 1979. So I do remember a time before the internet, and I do remember a time, in my case, before funnel cake. In where I was from, I grew up in Alaska, right? So we had the Alaska State Fair, and it's a huge thing, but their big thing, because of the bizarre growing season in Alaska, is gigantic oversized vegetables. Like you haven't seen cabbages this big ever in your life, and eggplant and peaches. They have softball peaches there, the size of softballs. They're delicious. So yeah, now we finally revealed how old I am. So yeah.
So we're in like chronological order. You got Jen,
we are
like the youngest, and then you're the oldest, and I'm right like smack dab in the middle. Perfect.
Yeah.
You got like,
and the reason I dye my hair blue right here, so you can't see how much gray there is. There's a lot.
Well, see, my partner has white hairs coming in, and I'm so excited because that's going to be a great phase. And also, it's so much easier to dye your hair when it's like gray or white or lighter color. But honestly, I would say that you do look the youngest, I think, out of all 3 of us here. No offense to you, Captain, or myself.
I don't know, Jen. I think you look the youngest. I really do. I might
so.
look older than Puck, but I definitely don't look I definitely don't look younger than you.
Well, I'm just gonna backtrack all of this before I say anything else.
Oh man, if I shaved my beard off, I might look younger than you.
Yes, this is I don't know if I ever told you, but I have seen a picture of you, baby-faced, wearing glasses. I don't know if you know this picture exists on the internet.
Of me? Or
Yes,
Puck?
of you. Uh,
We're gonna have to
also,
talk after the show.
I
I'm
know.
curious
Well, yeah,
about this.
we'll talk about this. You look,
Who is
it
your
looks like
supplier?
it looked like you missed your casting call for the Book of Mormon.
Oh my god. Yep, I'm gonna have to get my agents on the phone.
And since we
Immediately.
brought it up, I was Mormon for a hot minute there. So
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well,
since we brought it up,
well, please, actually, that is a more perfect segue because I would love to hear your whole story. How did
Oh.
you get into doing this stuff?
Yeah. Okay, long story, very short. I was born and raised Catholic, Filipino Catholic on top of that, so you get the cultural mix along with the religious mix. When I was 15 years old, which is the age of confirmation, I went through all the classes and all that I was supposed to go through, and at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I still have too many questions. I'm not really fully bought into this. Out of respect for the other people who are in my class who do want to participate, I'm going to sit this one out, which I thought was a respectful answer, right? It's like, this is important to you, and I don't want to take that away from you. It's not important to me. I'm just gonna, not be part of this. And that raised like the biggest commotion that you would have ever thought of in my family, because that's just what you did. You're 15, you get confirmed. But I did not, and instead I spent a good amount of time just researching religion. And now, remember, as I say researching religion, remember this was 1997, so there was no here, go turn on the Atheist Experience on YouTube and do this. No, I had to do a lot of this just bare bones research, not even the internet. I'm talking about card catalog. Okay, this is old school atheism. And for a while there, just in my exploration, I started in Usenet groups and other good old news groups online, where I would meet people who were interested in having the same kind of conversations, and I would just engage there. And finally, I think I was about 22 or 23. I was just like, this nothing adds up and makes sense other than all religions have something messed up about them to the point where it's not worth following. And so I guess I was like atheist all the way back then, but there just wasn't a community. I lived in Alaska, and I guess like the default setting in Alaska, like a lot of places, just you are some religion, right? Just because of but over there, because of the kind of population they had, it was either Catholic or Russian Orthodox. I didn't run into a lot of fundamental Christianity till I moved here to Ohio. It just didn't make it up there. But so on my own, I just did that, and I just kind of quietly lived my life as an atheist. I didn't really care. It's not like I was bombarded by religion a lot. They left me pretty much alone until I moved to Ohio and I met my very first young Earth creationists. Now I thought at the time, like, young Earth creationists were just everybody knows someone whose uncle used to believe in a young Earth, right? Until I moved to Ohio, I didn't know that these people actually existed and were still among us, right? And I was blown away, and I worked with a couple of them, and I was like, their basic scientific background and mathematics background is so lacking that they don't even know how to evaluate evidence that they're given. So if they are given something by answers in Genesis, am I allowed to talk about? I mean, we
Oh yeah, you
answers
can
in
talk
Genesis.
shit about Ken Ham,
Okay.
Owen Hall.
I'm the noob guy. I don't want to ruffle feathers just yet. We'll save that for the after show. But I they don't even know how to process this information that they're receiving from Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis can say whatever they want to. Creation Ministries can say whatever they want to, and all these people are like, well, it's on this website, so it must be good. They don't have the tools and the scientific background to look at this and say, wait a second, I don't think this is accurate. And so I just took my time. Forget about creation stuff. Forget about religious stuff. Let's just talk about basic math, okay? Like if you know your trigonometry, and you have 2-meter sticks and a good friend about 10 miles away, you too can measure the curve of the Earth, right? It's not a big mysterious secret. But if you don't even have those basic tools, right? Like, how do you begin to, you just, all you got is trust, and then you got to trust who gave you the information, to trust where the information is coming from. And that was my first experience, and you want to call it debating theists. That would be back in like 2007, 2008, around about then. um and so even then, like, the internet was, internet atheism was probably still in its infancy. And only recently, when the pandemic hit, did I take this to YouTube. And it was the producer of this show. I don't know if we talk about Ethan much. If not, we don't talk about him enough. And Ethan had for a while had like the Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist conglomerate. I believe at his peak he was putting on 5 2-hour shows a week. And
Wow.
that was how I got my start. Was he brought me on there to talk about presuppositionalism, which I don't know.
Mhm.
Again, I'm probably not supposed to talk about that here, because that's just going to bring out the callers. And I was just working with Ethan on the early
Bring
parts of
it.
the channel. Yeah. And then from there, again, pandemic, so everybody was bored. So I started hooking up with ACA shows, and I did a few of those. And here I am now. I'm not a recurrent host there anymore, but I still like to pick up the occasional YouTube appearance, which is what brings me here. I've never, in all this time, I've never gotten to meet Dave, and now I get an invitation to be on the show, and Dave decides to be in Switzerland, so that's great.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll fix that. It's interesting how many similarities I find in both of our stories. Minus the being raised Catholic. I got very lucky that my mom was raised Catholic, and so she was like, "Oh God, no, I'm never doing that to my children." Um, but it really was around that same time, the pandemic, that, well, about a year after that was when I got really into doing all of this, and it kind of just snowballed really quickly. But at the beginning of COVID was when I first met and spoke to somebody who was a young Earth creationist. And as somebody who went to, you know, private elementary schools as a kid, where we had an entire class just about human evolution in 4th grade, my mind was completely blown. I didn't know how to comprehend that much misinformation about the history of us and everything all around us. I mean, what was your first, what was your sort of takeaway when you moved to Ohio from Alaska and suddenly you meet people who think that the earth is 6,000 years old?
I was just like, I knew that the concept of young Earth creationism existed, but again, I thought it was like a very fringe thing. And now here I
Mhm.
am, like I am among the gorillas and not just observing from the mist. I and I guess it just blew me away at first, just thinking, like, how can you be in the information age now, where you have access to more information than we've ever had in the history of mankind, and still not be able to. And the answer that I came up with is, at some point it's got to be deliberate, right? It's got to be,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
not just, you're not processing, you're not looking for the information, which is one thing. And especially if you're in an insular community, like if you're in a very tight controlled cult, you don't have access to that. I get that, right? But another part of that is, like, to how many times have we heard apologists who deliberately take it and then just disregard the information in the first place, like find a way to make it, like, okay, scientific knowledge, whatever, this is why this particular thing isn't real. So I love science educators out there, and if I can name drop, we have names like Brainbug, and who is
Rainbow's a
it?
good one.
Gutsick Gibbon is fantastic at this also. Who Simon Dan, who are these science educators who are not just taking the theory and saying it's bunk, but actually showing why and showing what's real, and then leaving resources behind so you can continue to do the research on your own if you want to. So thank you very much, science educators, for doing what you
Yes.
do.
Yes.
Vice Rhino's channel used to be a lot about science education also. So great material there.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned Brainbug and Vice Rhino. There are so many fantastic science educators out there. I
And
mean, last
Forrest
week,
Valakai,
yeah, yeah,
renegade science teacher. He's like the modern day Bill Nye the Science Guy.
hmm I
Yeah.
know. I'm always so tempted to say that because his presence is just so comforting and just
Yeah.
also so I can't talk, enigmatic and charming. But
Yeah.
I've people make the comparison all the time, and I've heard him say many a time that he doesn't want to be the next Bill Nye. He wants to be the first Forrest Valkai.
Yeah.
And I definitely stand by that. I mean, really, it's it's
It's one thing to have like the knowledge. Like there's plenty of scientists out there that have the knowledge. But it's kind of like what they call in the theater world a triple threat. You can act, you can sing, and you can dance. You're a triple threat. When it comes to like scientists, like you don't just have the knowledge, you have the charisma and you have the energy, you have the personality to deliver this information in a way that's understandable to the common person and a way that's entertaining, that's going to keep people glued to it. Like that's why I like to compare like Forrest and Bill Nye's, because they both have that energy. Yeah, they're two completely separate people with their own styles, but they both have that like triple threat about them.
Yeah, if YouTube and TikTok and all these different channels hosted their own award shows, then they would definitely get like the EGOT of the internet.
Now, back in my day, it wasn't just Bill Nye. Does anybody else remember Beekman?
Yes,
I don't.
I do.
Okay, that was like a little more on the crazy end of science education, but it was still very entertaining. And as much as people remember Bill Nye and talk about Bill Nye, for me it was always Beekman. And there's no good reason for that other than I just found that show to be very entertaining. So you're right. I mean, it's one thing to say, it's like the truth should speak for itself, but it's got to be made a little bit sellable too.
Beekman's World, yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize about YouTube content creation is, and this is, ask around because they'll give you this number. For every minute of content, it took about an hour to make it. Right, especially the really highly polished stuff like Vice Rhino and Paulogia. Okay, between the research that goes into it, the writing of the script, the editing, every minute took an hour, without exaggeration. So you were talking about the triple threat. I would add the quadruple of that they have the time to make this high end content. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff they do.
It really is, and honestly, I mean, without Paulogia, I legitimately would not be here. It really was, the way everything worked out. I in 2020 had my first long, in-depth conversation with a young Earth creationist who didn't believe in evolution, and that totally sent my mind into a frenzy. And so I like bought a bunch of books by Bart Ehrman and like retook science classes and like did my best to educate from both fronts with, this individual that I love so dearly. And then, naturally I found Paulogia's channel. And I want to say it was like February of 2021, he posted a video about TikTok being this bastion of amazing atheist content creators, one of them being Captain Dadpool. And I realized, I was like, oh, I follow like half of these people. This is really cool.
Yeah.
And the last thing he said was, one thing you can do to help the atheist community and to help fight back against these like TikTok preachers is to just make your own content. It's just a phone and 60 seconds.
Yeah, and don't, as polished as shows like this are, and as polished as like Vice Rhino and Paulogia's channel, among others, there's many good ones out there. If you want to get your voice out there, there are many content creators who started with their cell phone in the backseat of their minivan. Right. That's how they started. They just started talking about the things that were important to them, and they kept on talking about it. They engaged with the audience and engaged with them, and they became huge. The one that I can think of right now is Exmo Lex. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Exmo Lex. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how she started her channel, was in, from her iPhone in the back of her minivan. And now she's got a wonderful following and a great message, and she's continuing to engage on many fronts. So it doesn't take much. And even if you don't get huge, I can absolutely guarantee you that there is someone out there that you can touch that nobody else can. Okay, like there are some people like maybe they're close to you, you've earned their trust, and you are the one atheist that they were like, wow, you know what, you're not like the other atheists. I can talk to you and you're not making fun of me, or maybe in some cases you are making fun of me and you're not afraid to speak up about how crazy these beliefs are. So if you have a voice and you want to put it out there, there's room for you. And like we were saying, this is getting huge and going everywhere. It's not just YouTube now. It's TikTok, and I imagine Vine before that. Even before that, when we were on Reddit or on Usenet, We're taking the fight on all fronts, and we want people out there everywhere, wherever you are. You probably know about social media fronts that I don't. So
That's one thing I learned about my time on TikTok is one day I made a video. I think it was like the beginning of 2022, and I was like, "Hey, year end review, right? Why do you guys follow me? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? Do you want me to get more political? Do you want to get more into social justice? Do you want me to stay in my lane? What do you want me to do? Because my content's kind of all over the place." And everyone's like, "No." By a pretty huge majority, the response I got was, "No, we follow you because you're authentic." I'm like, okay, cool. That's not the answer I was expecting at all. But that shows like how there are people out there who are looking for that like raw, visceral, like content from people who are not super polished. They're not scripted. They're not like planning their show. They're not putting a lot of time and effort into looking perfect. They just their phone's right there and they just fucking react to whatever's going on. Like that's what people are really looking for. Someone who is just not afraid to be themselves in front of a camera and is not afraid of the repercussions. So if there's anyone out like what I try to encourage people who is like thinking about starting a channel or a TikTok and talking about it, like just fucking do it. Just do it. Like you'll find your niche. Just do it and you'll it's not as scary as once you start, it's not that scary.
Well,
You
and
know?
I think that's one of the interesting things about TikTok. That was a platform that I'd heard about, and I just kind of deliberately avoided. I was like, oh, like I can't dance, and also like
Yeah,
fuck the
it's a
Chinese
teenage dancing
government.
app. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fuck that.
exactly. And it was, and I'm so surprised that now after being on it, I've realized that one of the reasons why it's actually really incredible is because it is so easy and so accessible and just so quick to make content that it does seem like pretty much every video that I see by people that I meet on TikTok, it genuinely feels like just sitting in their living room, like hearing their monologue, having a conversation. It feels authentic in a way that Instagram and even Vine really didn't. Granted, Vine, you had like 6 seconds to make your point.
Yeah.
But I think that I mean, I've been on Reddit for gosh, how long has it been a thing? About that long, as long as I've been on it. And yet I can't say that I've made as many close, like important best friends. And TikTok is the only place that I can say that's happened.
That's another
Husk, you
thing is
just got so excited.
yeah, no, I
yeah,
just
there's
saw a question in chat. I actually know the answer to that. So
oh go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
okay. The question was if abiogenesis is a thing, why did it only happen once? Because we actually don't know that it only happened once. Because there's a very fuzzy line when biology or when chemistry actually turns into biology. So it could be constantly happening on some scale somewhere. The other problem with that is that existing life right now, has a huge advantage over another form of life that's going to come up. So if it is possible for a life to start somewhere else, which is almost always going to be in the unicellular phase, there's a lot of unicellular predators out there who can very easily just snarf it up and you'll never see it again. So we actually don't know that it isn't constantly happening. And a lot of it is going to come down to how you define where the line is between chemistry and biology. I got one. Okay.
Yes, that was great. I love that question because so here's the other thing. Like I've been a lifelong atheist. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that I had a like pretty solid science education from a very young age. I was like, still swaddled the first time that I went to California Academy of Sciences, and I went there pretty much every weekend for 10 years. I think about just the scale of the universe and even just our solar system, nay, our galaxy. And then I like hear about these religions. I'm like, wait, you think that like whoever made all of this really just cares about us on like this planet?
Yeah.
Out of all the ones in our solar system, out of all the ones in our galaxy, out of billions of galaxies, no, I'm not buying it. It seems very self-centered, and
Yes.
and
And
I
even
mean to say that with abiogenesis, I think it would be would be arrogant to assume that it could only happen here and not in one of the other, billions of galaxies that we have yet to and may never explore.
And
And
even
also,
with
yes,
like,
things eat things.
yeah,
New
even
life
with like
will not
the
pass on.
history of our own planet, like our own species, our own species has suffered, or our planet has suffered, what, 4 or 5 mass extinction events. At one point, our species was dwindled down to somewhere between
Mhm.
20,000 and 200,000. Like, we almost did not make it because we all froze to death. Like, if God is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and all that, omnibenevolent, why were there all these mass extinction events before His chosen people were, you know, raised from the dust? It doesn't make any sense. Of course, in order to believe that, you have to be like, oh, well, all that's fake news, right? And that's where the whole, like, Earth creationists are like, yeah, that didn't happen. Scientists are biased and not trustworthy. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's what you have to say in order to maintain your beliefs in your God. You have to say that's all fake.
Y-
And after a while, there's just so much of it, like you can't hold back the sheer volume of evidence anymore without causing some serious mental gymnastics going on there. You have
Mhm.
two choices. You can either continue to do the gymnastics or just shut it off and say, I'm not going to receive information anymore, or I'm going to have a very easy a very easy way of dealing with it. Well, even if I don't understand it, I'm going to default to this as the truth. Like, this is what's in
Mhm.
Genesis. This is what we're going to go by. If it starts to not make sense with that, obviously something's there. I don't need to understand why it doesn't make sense. I just need to know where where my bottom line is,
I
and
had
Mhm.
that's a problem.
I had a debate with a Christian one time, and I brought up the issue the topic was whether God exists or not. And I brought up natural disasters. It's like, why are natural disasters necessary? And my opponent's response was, it can build character. I'm not kidding. It builds character. So, like,
I remember that. And
yeah,
my
like, really? That's what you're
well,
going with? Like, thousands of people die because of a mudslide or a volcano or a tsunami, whatever, but it builds character among the first responders and the people who survive it. That, like, why does God, even if that's true, why does God need that? Why does
mhm.
God need to build character in people who survive natural disasters that He caused to happen? It makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, well, on top of that, I mean, while we're talking about, the solar system and the galaxies and the universe, like, we're not the only planet that has natural disasters. It's just the only
Yeah.
reason why they're disasters is because there's people there that are impacted. But there are storms on other planets. We're not
Mhm.
the only planet with an atmosphere that does things like rain down crazy shit and cause a
Yeah.
lot of damage.
Yeah, have you seen Jupiter? Jupiter is just one big swirling natural
Yeah,
disaster.
Yeah. And what,
exactly,
what planet is it
exactly.
that rains diamonds?
Oh,
Like, isn't there a
Oh.
planet that literally
Neptune.
rains
Yeah,
diamonds or
It's
something
one of
like
the
that?
ones that's
I
way
was
out
I
there.
was
Yeah,
gonna
it's
guess
way out. Yeah,
Neptune.
like,
Yeah.
Where's Cosmic Kyle? Cosmic Kyle would know the answer to this.
Yeah.
imagine that. Like,
Find
it
him in chat.
hails here, but imagine if it rained diamonds. Like, that would do a lot of damage to your
Yeah.
car.
It
And
would
then you
do a
got
lot
to
of
deal
damage
with
to the
the
diamond
insurance
market too.
But
company,
So
and they got
then
to
I was
file
gonna
like, my
I
car
was
was destroyed by diamonds. How much would that cost?
I was gonna say you could afford a new car, but then just like it is today, people would realize that diamonds are worthless and it's an artificially inflated industry. It
Yeah.
would just be a lot less, it wouldn't be as easy to hide as it
yeah,
is.
I always wondered about that. If diamonds are expensive because they're rare, how is something this rare available in like 5 different stores in the mall? Like, how are
Yeah.
we? I don't get that. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
It's because 'cause they're not rare, it's because the beer sucks and
They're artificially
colonialism is a
rare.
thing. Yeah.
You know what? There was a follow-up question. You mind if I hit this back? It
Please.
was about DNA being the cause of life, and the weird thing is, like, we already actually know that there are other possible complex structures that are possible to make out of molecules other than just the DNA molecule. Okay, like another proposed form of life is that possibly silicone-based life is a possible thing to exist. But again, here on Earth, DNA carbon-based life has had such a head start that it would immediately dominate any other type of life that tried tried to start, even at the unicellular level. Okay, so even if that the possibility exists and it's happening somewhere, then it just gets snarfed up by some paramecium somewhere, and now it's all gone. Right? It's because of the advantage that the DNA-based life had, just because they were here first. But that's not to say it's not possible. That's not to say it isn't happening, and it's not to say that in other kinds of conditions, like the kinds that you would find in other planets, it isn't already. It's continuing to happen now. So I hope that made some sense to you over there. So, but yeah, that's why DNA-based life just was here already. It is almost impossible for something else to come in and compete.
Yeah, we called dibs on Earth. That doesn't mean that it had to be. It's just the way that it is. Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's amazing when I'm just thinking back to various conversations that I've had with, apologists or just Christians in general, where they say, well, look at the likelihood of life being the way it is, and like, look at how everything is perfectly fine-tuned. It's like, well, besides like the whole classic, yeah, the sun gives us cancer, that's pretty fucked. It's just, if you understand evolution, you understand that essentially we're just like, life is just like a babbling brook that will just fill crevices and niches as it goes along. And at times it will totally dry out. And we're just lucky. We're the lucky dribbles that have made it through billions of years of evolution. So of course we fill the crevice. Of course we fill the puddle. And yet we're the puddle saying, oh, how nice is it that this is made perfectly for me? As it dries up.
Apologists always say this process was random, out of nowhere. How do you explain it? But it's like, no, what happened, and could not have happened any other way, because it followed a naturalistic steps of processes. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. And the other thing that they don't get is it's not truly random. You've all heard the apologetic about it. It's the equivalent of a tornado going through a junkyard and you get an airplane out of it, right? But what they're missing is that first of all, it didn't happen suddenly and spontaneously like that. It happened in small chunks. So instead of thinking about it as like an airplane spontaneously happened, think about it. Every time the right screw gets to the right place, it stays there. And it stays connected to the piece that it's supposed to be connected to. And eventually, after enough tornadoes, this will start to build. Like if you had a deck of cards, like 52 random cards, right? They can be in any order. And yes, in a completely random deck, there's like an astronomical number of... To say it's astronomical is kind of not giving way too much credit to astronomy. There's a ridiculous number. But if every time you shuffled, you got to keep one card in place, now it's not random anymore. And then when you take in things like magnetic force and electron connect, I forget what it's called because I'm not a science educator, but the little things that make it so that carbon chains are more likely to form. Because, there's some elements that tend to hang on to other elements a lot easier than, like, that's why we have so many carbon chains. That's why hydrogen links up with everything and their little sister, because it's not random. Since it's not random, and since there are little forces that are encouraging these things to happen, it's going to happen. It's an eventuality. It's not random. It's not true random.
I've never heard that.
I went on too long.
No, me neither.
I've never heard that before. That's really cool. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. I was going to say you're selling yourself short, because that was a fantastic, layman's explanation of why things are the way they are.
The thing that I never understood about the argument from design was, like, for me, something is designed if you could tell what the end purpose was intended to be, right? And we have no idea that the state of the Earth now was ever either the intended goal or an intended stepping stone to get to an eventual goal, right? So if we have no idea if what we are now was ever intentional to begin with, how could we say it was designed? Unless we have some sort of way to say, yes, this was the desired result, because that's the hallmark of something that's designed, right? We have some intent to make something. Maybe it didn't go out exactly as planned, because I've never been able to make a key lime pie cheesecake that actually looked and tasted like a key lime pie cheesecake. But at least we know what I was trying to get to. We have no idea if this was designed, what the goal was. And if that's the case, it's possible that life is a side effect and not the intent. We just happen to also be here, but we're not the point of the creation. I don't know. So that's why, since the very beginning, argument from design never sat with me, because there's no way to show that this was an intended result.
Yeah. Well, and
I'm
I
weird.
think, well, I would just, expand on that to say, like, when you read the Bible, what can we
Right.
say about God's intentions? The person who made all of this happen when he himself said oopsies and flooded everybody.
Yeah, he
Yeah, it's
had
like
to hit the reset button almost right away.
when they use the
Which-
watchmaker analogy, like you're walking on the beach and you see a watch, like the watch was the intended purpose. You could see there was a creator, someone created the watch, and the watch was the end result. What is the end result of us? Because it seems like we haven't gotten there yet, and God has fucked up along the way several times. I don't know.
Yeah. Which, that's funny. So we do have a call in the queue. Tiger from Colorado. Tiger, he's a funny guy. And the question is actually pretty on point. How can God regret things? It all makes no sense when you think about how Abraham, etc. So many inconsistencies. So,
I know the Christian answer to this.
alrighty, then I will.
Oh, sorry. We should let. I jumped the gun. We should.
No,
I apologize.
that is
Let's get the
okay.
caller on there.
I will get Tiger on the line. Hi,
Sorry,
Tiger.
sorry.
Speak, mortal.
Hey, GV, how you doing, kiddo?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, bud?
You okay? I'm doing good. I like your guests especially when they were talking about, the absurdities of having an omnipotent, omniscient God. What would he have? I don't get how the whole thing started, because if he exists and he's perfect, that means he doesn't need improvement. And why would he need humans? I know what they say. He was lonely. He needed somebody to worship him. But honestly, if he's just out there floating around being God, he wouldn't need anything. He wouldn't need McDonald's. He wouldn't need all this stuff. It's just, the absurdity just is beyond me. And I just love watching theists tap dance around these issues. It's real fun.
I know the theist answer to this. The theist answer is that when you look at the Bible and you see words like regret, or when you see what God would want, it's not actually regret the way you and I would imagine it, because we are incapable of understanding God because God's ways are so far above our ways. The best we can come to is to use a word like regret, where you might have some understanding of it. You might get what regret means, but now you need to scale that up to God's size. So what you think of regret, even if it has like non-God-like qualities in it, now you have to just scale that up to God. Like we're just so poor in our understanding that we have to resort to a word like regret.
Well,
just
wouldn't
because
he
of the
know
limits
that
of
though?
semantics.
Wouldn't he know that beforehand? Wouldn't he know the best way to communicate with us and write a damn book? Shit, Donald Trump wrote a book. Well, he ghostwrote it. I mean, any idiot can write a book.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, like this line does not stand up to any sort of scrutiny if you're willing to actually follow it down. You're absolutely right. And this goes back to the whole at some point you just shut it down the conversation. So
this is a big disconnect between
ancient
Judaism.
If I was a woman, if I was a female, I would not be a Christian. I don't see how they can. You got 1 Corinthians 6. You start about verse 11. And it talks about how they were made to the glory of man, and they need to shave their heads or cover them. So actually the Muslims got that right. The Christians don't do that. Although I hear in parts of Jerusalem that they make them cover everything up.
And certain
But they don't get that right. They don't follow the damn book. It's just absurd. I just get so frustrated. I've been doing this since 1974. I've been debating. I quit about 10 years ago. I just got so sick of these losers. I was telling GV one time, I'm like, everybody, I love Matt Dillahunty, but they talk about how he's been doing this a long time. And I'm like, I was doing this when he was a brutish animal impulse in his great grandfather's pants crease. That's not, there's people that I know that have been, what was the guy's name? Dennis McKinsey. Have you ever read any of his stuff?
No.
He was doing this back in the 50s and 60s. and he was bringing out he actually had a newsletter, and you can get if you want a copy, I can get it to you. I've got them. But he had about a 1,200-page book on just the problems and everything that was associated. He took the Bible apart verse by verse and took everything out. And he's my hero.
You know what? I hope you're going to clarify that and tell us a little bit more, because when I just did a quick search for Dennis McKenzie on Google, it came up with Dennis McKenzie, internationally renowned clairvoyant and psychic.
So, no,
it can't be the same one.
No, he's look at Dennis. Yeah, it's Dennis McKenzie. His last name is McKenzie. He's an atheist, and he's been for years. He's on YouTube. He's actually got like a series of a couple of hundred videos on YouTube where he breaks down the Bible and goes through and wipes it clean. But it's an incredible. Might not be Dennis. No, I think it's Dennis. But he's been doing it. You know, he was doing it when I was a kid, and he's the one that got me into doing it. And then there's all kinds of people out there doing it. But I honestly think that, you know, if you're debating for 2,000 years, that's not a debate. It's eonal masturbation.
Oh,
I don't think there's a debate. There's not a debate to be had.
Yeah.
There's not a debate to be had.
So back to your original question, I would say it's the idea of God being omniscient and omnipotent and all that. The problem stems from Christians pretty much like bastardizing the Jewish God, Yahweh. Because if you ask any Jew, especially in the first century, they never thought that God was omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent. They recognized that God had flaws and made mistakes. The idea that God was perfect and never made mistakes, that was a product of the Enlightenment period in the 17th century.
Yes, it was.
Yes, that's a fairly.
Yes, it was. And another thing about it is, you know that Yahweh was actually one of the 7 sons of El Anyon in the Sumerian religion. Yahweh was one of the 7 sons. He was the youngest, and one of his brothers. Huh?
So there's more than 7, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I think maybe it was 17. Yeah, but what I mean is, one of his brothers was Baal.
Yeah,
that was his damn brother. So he's Beelzebub, Baal, all that.
Anat. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet they talk about God. You can't pronounce his name. Yeah.
Well, you can't
say his name. You can't.
So now you're reminding me about a book that I read a long time ago that I remember nothing of, called A History of God by Karen Armstrong.
Yes.
Again, hate to be name dropping again, but that you just reminded me that I need to read that again. So.
But El was the original
excellent
Canaanite
book.
god of he's the supreme god of the Canaanite pantheon. He had a wife, Asherah, and among their children was Yahweh and Baal and Anat and several others. And basically, when the Bible says that Yahweh was a jealous God, that meant that he wanted more. So in the Old Testament, Yahweh was given his inheritance. This is said in Isaiah, what was it, 25? I can't remember.
Right, they gave him the land, didn't they?
They gave him his inheritance. His inheritance was Israel, but he was a jealous God. Baal was given another, and Anat was given another, and he wanted more than just his inheritance. El, the supreme God, again, his father, he didn't care about being worshipped. He was a supreme God. He didn't give a shit. So he was just like, yeah, all right, you want more people to worship you? Fine, go ahead. And this is recorded in Psalms 15, I think it is. But yeah, the whole mythology of Yahweh comes from Canaanite mythology. And it's fascinating stuff. It's one of my favorite topics. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, Israel and sort of, the Sumerians, Canaanites, everybody around there, they were all descended from these nomadic henotheistic tribes from northern Africa who then immigrated up north. And the thing about henotheism is that it's slightly different than polytheism in the sense that, like, there's all these separate tribes and they all sort of have their one god, but they still recognize like the divinity of everybody else's god. There's no sort of like monotheistic, like, dick comparison.
They were never like, no, your God doesn't exist.
Sure.
Yeah.
They were like, your God does not deserve to be worshipped as much as my God.
That sounds almost like the Roman gods. As long as you allowed them to worship all their gods. I think that's why they had a problem with Christians, is because they said, no, there's only one God and you're not worshiping him.
Well, I mean, it's funny, like and Captain Dadpool, you can probably speak on this a lot better than I can, but the way that I sort of understand the origins of Roman persecutions of the Christians, it was really sort of, they were like, oh yeah, like, you guys, like, weirdos, whatever, do your thing. But yeah, if like, say all of the crops failed, or say 70% of Rome burns in the 60s, like, if something goes wrong, they're going to do a head count and be like, wait, did we all pray to the god of whatever it is that got fucked up? Yeah, we all did, except for you guys. Hey, you weirdos. And that's when that's when you give them swirlies in the locker room. But
there was never any evidence. There was never any evidence that they went out and just specifically persecuted Christians.
There's actually,
as a matter of fact, when you look in the book of Revelations, 666 refers to Nero, and they thought that Jesus was going to come back to destroy Rome for conquering Israel, the Canaan, Israel. Yeah. But none of the historians of the time that were in the Middle East even recorded any of that. I mean, I'm not a mysticist, but I'm not going to say I'm not a mysticist because there isn't any evidence for Christ outside of the New Testament.
So there's
Jesus
actually
Christ.
evidence to the contrary when it comes to like Christian persecution, like you were saying, because we have Pliny the Younger, right, who was a governor at the end of
Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger, Philo of Alexandria.
He saw these Christians and he like arrested them and he tortured them. And he was like, what are y'all doing? What are you worshiping? What's going on? Are you conspiring? That was the fear. Uh-huh. He was afraid they were conspiring against the Roman government. But it seemed like they weren't breaking any laws. So he wrote a letter to their emperor.
Sure.
What should I do with these people? I don't know who they are. I don't know what their deal is. So the emperor wrote back and it was like, okay, don't seek them out. But if you do, if they happen, like if someone drags them, then you can like maybe try them. And so Pliny was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I will tell them that I will torture them, maybe kill them, unless they offer a sacrifice to the Roman gods. Like you can still, they never said you have to forsake your God or denounce that your God existed.
Sure.
Because Rome was pantheistic at the time. They didn't care what you believed. The problem is you had to worship their God. So he was like, I'm going to tell them to offer a grain offering to our God. Like, burn this plant. I will kill you, or you can burn this plant. Most people burned the plant.
Yep.
We have very little records of people actually
saying, hell yeah.
I'm not going to offer this.
That's a no-brainer.
Right, yeah.
And
that's a damn no-brainer.
It's interesting as well when we think about, the spread of Christianity in the modern era, where Christianity has been very successfully shared across continents with very different, religious beliefs and traditions. And for the most part, it's because they've kind of done the same thing as the Romans do, where it's like, oh, none of what you believe is wrong. It's just like those spirits that you're talking about, those are actually demons. Like they just sort of make everything sort of mold there. It's like, you were never wrong. Like you don't have to disbelieve what's going on. We're just going to put it into a different context. As long as you say Jesus is your savior, then yeah, like everything else is totally, pretty much valid.
How many times have I seen that, like in a Facebook group or something, where they say that, yeah, everybody is just experiencing different aspects of God, but it's the same God. They just don't realize that it fits very neatly into the Christian narrative. I know.
And what an amazing way to say that, oh yeah, nobody else is wrong. They just don't understand yet that I'm really the one that's right.
How convenient.
I'll tell you what scares the hell out of me is you got Alex Jones and guys like that who can come out and say they're Satanistic, which I don't even know what that means unless we're talking about Anton LaVey. But they've got the whole thing wrong. They just, they're idiots. This country is filled with dumb fucks. I'm serious.
And they vote, so
yeah. Which reminds me, hey, if you're not a dumb fuck, you still should have time to register to vote. We have a very important midterm coming up in a couple months, so wherever you are,
I'm registered. I'm registered
in the history.
I always vote.
Awesome. Well, hey,
but
Tiger,
I didn't vote for Biden. I voted against Trump.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's totally fair. But
okay, sweetie, I'll let you guys go. You guys you're doing really good. I enjoy this. This panel is really good, GV.
Thanks.
This is a good chat. Thanks for calling in.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, honey buns.
Hey, you guys have a great one, okay?
You too.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
You got such a lively community here. I love it.
Oh yeah.
And this is what, like, forget us, content creators, because so much of this sphere would not exist if not for the thousands, if not millions of people who are watching, right? We owe all this to you, because like back in the day, I sound like I'm old. When I deconverted, there was no such thing as a community like this. And even though, there is no such thing as one atheist community, at least we're able to find each other a lot easier than we did back in the day, where we had books and we didn't have an online community. And we might have been lucky if we had like a small pocket of friends who like to talk about this. But now we're finding each other, and it's not because of us, it's because you guys exist and you guys are continuing the conversation and encouraging people like us to continue the conversation in front of the camera. So thank you. You're doing the hard work. We're just I just look pretty.
You do look beautiful. And yeah, I mean you're absolutely right. I don't know. I'm constantly blown away by the fact that I see so many different names on here every single week that, I'm truly honored. And it's true that none of us would be able to do what we're doing if it weren't for people who wanted to engage with this. But, you do bring up a really good point about how for a vast majority of people who deconstructed well before YouTube and TikTok were really things. I mean, you're kind of on this island of isolation, and like it wasn't every day that you could just sit at your computer on your phone and listen to four jagovs like ourselves talk about Pliny the Younger and the history of Roman persecution of Christians. I mean, and Ricky, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, because you deconstructed before TikTok was a thing, and now you have become a huge beacon to people who are deconstructing.
Oh, stop. Yeah, no, I've never been super active on social media. I deconstructed, on my own. I never Googled www.howthefuckdoyoudeconstruct.com. I never reached out for help. I just kind of went through it. And then I came out on the other end, and I was and I started listening to podcasts, like Cognitive Dissonance, The Scathing Atheist. I learned about Dave Warnock, but still, I was never in comments or Reddit or anything like that. I was just keeping to myself. And then, I downloaded this TikTok thing, and the first several videos I made were more just me bullshitting, making jokes, and a little bit of political commentary. And then I made one video about my deconstruction, and that video went viral, and I was introduced to a community that I had no idea was there. And then my DMs just started getting flooded with people asking questions. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea this was a thing. So I've just been trying to keep up with it, and it's been a wild ride, and I'm very honored and humbled and grateful that I was able to help so many people with their deconstruction journey. It really is rewarding. It really is.
It's really different being on that end of the not spectrum, but that end of the conversation, right? Where now people are looking at you and saying, "Wow, thank you for going out there and saying the things that you say," and for being that I believe the word Genevieve used was beacon. So it's so humbling and at the same time kind of scary and intimidating. When I first started having conversations out here, I was like, "Oh, I hope that
Telling
doesn't
me.
happen to me." I am just a buffoon who's going out here and speaking his mind, right? Like I don't make a paragon out of me because I'm gonna make just as many mistakes as anybody else, and I'm gonna say the wrong thing, and I'm gonna, it's like we're just regular people, and I think part of normalizing atheism in the mainstream is to just say, you know what, we are just regular people. Okay, there are some people who like to go on shows like this and express their atheism by engaging directly with in conversation, but there are some others who are just, I guess, apatheist is a better word for it, where they just don't care, right? And they're out there, they don't believe in God and they don't really care for the conversations. But that's normal atheism also. And they're everywhere. They're in your communities. They're pretending to be Christian and sitting in the pews, but after church, they're like, okay, I don't really believe this stuff. So I'm glad that so many different kinds of atheism is getting out there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's quite a few atheists. I think most atheists that I know in my personal life are those kind of people who are like, oh yeah, I grew up in the church and then it sucked and now I don't want to talk about it. Like, that's that. Um, and I think that's the people that I know in this community that are the loudest tend to be the ones who were the most gung ho. They're the people who did go on mission trips, who did go to seminary, and who really put a big investment into those beliefs. And I do think that it's, people. I've heard so many therapists say that like there's only so much that a person can change, but when your entire worldview and your identity shatters, I think that's when you do make a massive shift in a lot of ways. I think people who grew up being dragged to church, but never bought into it, yeah, they're not gonna like go and start a YouTube channel to talk about all of the things that they hated hearing about. I mean, that would kind of be miserable. Although, I think that you're also right that there are so many different ways to be an atheist, and I don't think that there's a right or wrong way. I think, if anything, a wrong way might be, I don't know, don't give us a bad name. Don't pull a Catholic church or an SBC on us, okay? We get enough bad press as it is. That was a very dark joke, but to go back
I
to what
think
you
I think
to,
if there's a wrong way to be an atheist, it's being an atheist but pretending to be a Christian for the sake of not receiving any backlash or for fear of receiving.
yeah.
Now, there are some people, don't get me wrong, there's some people who like that have to like fake it till they make it. All right. There are absolutely people out there like that who are, in their early mid teens, they're dependent on their hyper religious family. There are people that have to do that. And I encourage people to do that regularly. Safety, security, your safety and security comes first. Um, but I think there's a lot of atheists that could speak out, that could, you know, adopt the label of atheist, maybe ruffle some feathers, um, for the sake of helping to normalize atheism. Because it's easy if you're like in the Bible Belt in a red state, it's easy to just keep your mouth shut or pretend like you're a Christian and blend in with the crowd. Stop fucking blending in with the crowd. You're not helping shit. Speak out, stand out, tell everybody you're an atheist, deal with the backlash that you receive if you can handle it. You know,
I might I do agree with you, but I might just push back
feel free to
and be a
disagree with me.
little.
Feel free.
Well, I'm gonna be really nuanced and sort of use my own personal experience, which was like, I, a lifelong atheist, moving to the Bible Belt and sort of thrown into a culture where people who I was trying really hard to impress, for personal reasons, were very devout. And if I just told them as soon as I met them, oh, yeah, no, sorry, I don't believe in any of that. Like, wait, you think that the earth is how old and you don't think evolution is real? Yeah, if I had done that, then they would have assumed that I was all of the other things that come with being an atheist in their eyes, which is an immoral, satanic, sexual deviant that is, just bad. Working for Satan. also a thing that we don't believe in. But what I did was, when they would talk about religion, I wouldn't say anything to the contrary. I would just be myself. I would try to be helpful and be kind. And so that over time, as they found out, as I became more open, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't believe in any of that stuff. Then there's a bit of cognitive dissonance that they have to go through where it's like, wait, I've always thought that atheists were like the spawn of Satan and that you guys are terrible and like you'll be left behind in the rapture and I shouldn't even care because you're just baddies. Then they have to hold that with the experience that they have of somebody who is an atheist that they think is, I hope, somebody that they like. Otherwise, they've all been lying to me.
Hey, real quick, Jen, did you see Neil's comment?
Yeah, I love that. Neil is shilling everywhere. It's a beautiful thing.
I love
He's
it.
got the 25th open. If you're
Thursday the
available.
20th. I will look at my calendar because, Neil, I feel like we talked about this last year, like a year ago. I've been wanting to come on your
that
show
long?
and
Wow.
chit chat.
Oh
I
yeah,
know.
my waiting list on Neil's channel was about 4 or 5 months between when I first expressed interest and when I got on, and honestly, one of the best experiences I've ever had. So
I think
awesome.
Neil's channel is like the second YouTube channel I ever went on. Like the first one was Tang, the Atheist Network group, and then like Neil was like, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I think Neil's like the second I ever went on, and that was like a year and a half ago now, right, Neil?
I was so nervous. The thing that made me most nervous about going on Neil's show, not to derail, but was I was afraid, since nobody had any idea who I was, that my after party would be completely empty, and like nobody would want to be there just because like nobody knew who I was. But to my surprise, there were actually people who wanted to be there, and I was deeply honored. So
yeah, Neil's after parties are pretty hopping. I don't get to join in there very often, but.
To go back, and it sounds like I get to be the tiebreaker here. I'm actually going to lean slightly Captain Dadpool, because there are people out there who are waiting for someone to be the first person to speak up. And once that first person speaks up, it becomes easier for them to say, hey, that's me too. So I get where you're coming from, because I absolutely agree with you, Genevieve, that you have to establish a bit of reputation first, and then you become the person who bucks the stereotype of everything they ever thought an atheist was, right? It's like, oh, I didn't know atheists could still be well groomed and well presented. I thought that you were all unwashed miscreants. Like, no, we shower just as much as everybody else does.
Yeah.
But then like to then I can understand where Captain Dadpool is saying, at least don't pretend to, maybe you don't have to announce it, but you don't have to pretend to be Christian either. So I don't know. I kind of lean toward the stand out, because it helps other people stand out. When I used to do, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll agree with Jen. Like you don't have to be like, oh, I'm atheist, everybody. Blah. You don't have to like.
You're going to church today.
You don't gotta be extra about it. Just be yourself. Be the loving, caring, gentle person that you are. And if the topic comes up, be like, yeah, I don't believe any of that, because then, but at that time, you've built relationships, you've built connections. These people are they're gonna like you, they're gonna enjoy spending time around you, and they're gonna be like, oh, you're not this way because Jesus. And that's going to confuse them. Like that's how you normalize atheism. Be your fucking self.
You can't be atheist. You're too nice.
When the time comes, then you tell them.
Yeah. And
have you ever gotten that? Have you ever gotten? You can't be an atheist. You're too nice. Have you ever I've gotten that before. So
I have a lot of Christians that follow me and enjoy my content.
Oh wow, nice.
It's weird. I think it's I don't know why. But yeah, I have a shocking number. I don't get a lot of hate mail from Christians. Every now and then I do, but like not as much as you'd expect. Most Christians I get in my comments are like, hey, I really enjoy your content. I disagree with you on this, but I like you. I'm going to keep following you.
Yeah.
And that's surprising.
What's interesting, so, for me, the Christians that I know in person and who I talk to about my beliefs and lack thereof, and we have good dialogues, you know, they're the ones who are genuinely interested in what I have to say about their religion and the Bible, and they also say that I am much more like Jesus than the people they go to church with. But it's like, it's the people who just like watch a video on TikTok or come to YouTube who want to be like, oh, well, you know, God's not real, or like God's real and you shouldn't make fun of him, or like you're going to go to hell. And it's, or I did get into a lovely debate with somebody from my old town who is sort of at the head of the local county Christian nationalist movement.
Oh,
And
no.
when I called her out on some biblical stuff, she said, "Well, I'm not going to listen to an atheist about the Bible." And it's like, well, Google is free, but I digress.
Yeah, I was gonna say, truth is truth, no matter who it comes from. So
Yeah. Oh, and in fact, the response that I got was, "Well, even the devil can read scripture."
Yeah, classic. It's a fucking classic.
Yeah, it's a good time. It is a good time. We do have another call, by the way.
Ooh.
Yeah, from Carolina. This is Dawn, they, them, or he, him. Frustration about people being in camps one side or the other without deep dives into facts. I know, Dawn.
Right?
Right? Let's get you
I
on
can
the
already
line.
tell this is going to be a great call.
Yeah. Hi, Dawn.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Hi. How you doing? Pretty
Doing
good. Pretty
good.
happy to be joining this today, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. What's going on?
Trying to get a sense of the delay because I don't want to step on anybody speaking, you know.
Yeah. The delay is it's just par for the course. We just, you know, we can just apologize profusely, but go on.
Well, I guess I should give you some big background so you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from. I was raised an impersonalist in Advaita Vedanta, and when I say raised an impersonalist in Advaita Vedanta, I was exposed to those ideas since they don't proselytize to children. It's been called atheist, but it is also panpsychist. And I've been talking with the other end of the practice, which is the Vedanta impersonalists, and realizing how dramatically different devotional theism is from personalism, which is the rational practice of personifying the universe to try to build a relationship.
I
find. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Please, after you.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to hear a little bit more about your position.
Well, I find that my Hare Krishna friends are trying to relate to Christians and are more concerned about making a connection than they are about making a distinction. But there is a dramatic distinction, and it's significant, and it's important, and it makes a huge difference. Rationalist personalism is not zealotry. It's not performative zealotry. It's not faith. And equivocating it, I feel like I've talked with so many Christians that want to say, no, there's all these deep versions of Christianity that do have psychoactive practice of meditation and maturation. But I don't see that in practice. I see evangelism. I see historic literalism. And I keep saying to them, then if this is the real religion, we need you to defeat the Antichrist in your religion, because I can't do it without throwing the baby with the bathwater.
You know, well, I'm not super familiar whatsoever with personalism, but if it's anything like just sort of anthropomorphizing the material world around us, I do think that, at least in my own sort of spiritual practice, that's a thing that I do, not in any, you know, metaphysical way, but you know, when I think
We're
about
rational.
Yeah, I guess, but it's kind of, at least in my experience, for me, it's very tongue-in-cheek. Something that I kind of go back to is I think about how single-cell organisms were all that were here 4 billion years ago, and then now, today, there is us and a tree, and so when I look at a tree, I say, "Oh, hello, friend, like, how's it going, cousin? It's amazing that we've been on this journey together," and you could say the same thing about, going back to the singularity. I don't think that there's anything wrong with recognizing that we are, in a sense, the universe observing itself. But I also don't even really see the need to put a name onto it whatsoever. I do think it kind of sounds like it's, and I apologize too. You're kind of hard to hear. You're kind of quiet on my end, but I do think that Christianity in particular has a habit of making humanity and us sort of separate from everything else. God created the land and then gave us dominion over it, and we get to name all the animals. We're completely separate from the animal kingdom, and then you get into manifest destiny and colonialism and the world just being made for us to take whatever, and that's been demonstrably bad. So I do believe that is frustrating. Do you guys have anything to add?
I'd say like the whole concept of having a personal relationship with God is a product of the Enlightenment period, kind of like we were talking about earlier. Prior to that,
It's not. It's not. You've got to read some Hare Krishna. You've got to learn that for 1,000 years, while Europe was undergoing Inquisition, India was not. And so these ideas are
no, that's
older
not to
than your
say
form of
that
Christianity.
Christians didn't believe that God loved them or they loved God, but like the language, having a
Right.
personal relationship with God, like when you say the sinner's prayer, do you accept God into your heart as your personal Lord and Savior? That is a product of the Enlightenment period. Prior to that, nobody used that type of language. But yeah, Christians have
In the West.
always believed that God loved them and they loved God. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. Go ahead though.
But I'm saying in the West, but in the East, the Thomasinian Church, the Hare Krishna movement may have crystallized in ISKCON in the '60s, but Advaita Vedanta and Vedanta is more than 2,000 years old. It's older than the entirety of the Abrahamic tradition. Well, I'm overstepping my bounds there, but I feel like, how can people live their whole life without learning any religious anthropology of world religion, and then talk about religion like they know what they're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say
the Abrahamic tradition is much older than 2,000 years old.
No, that's why I overstepped my bounds there. But I mean,
no,
okay,
I don't
that's fine.
want to try to root it.
Yeah, I mean, Hinduism is the oldest continued to be practiced living religion that we have today that predates Christianity and Abrahamic religions, of course.
Right.
But there are plenty of religions that existed prior to any of the religions that exist today, even Hinduism, that we just have no knowledge of. And I think that instead of diving in,
some people don't.
yeah, well, but not all of them. I mean, what is it? The oldest
Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Somebody
well,
can go,
don't get me started on Zoroastrianism. But but I'm just thinking about, one of the oldest, archaeological sites that we have of something that a big structure that people built that essentially looks like what might have been used as a communal worship place for multiple tribes to come together with all of these different massive figures that we're kind of assuming were gods, but this place is 10,000 years old. We don't know what they thought about those things. I just tend to think
and I don't
that
know that the Gita wasn't composed much later. I don't. That's why I was hesitant to go before Abraham. I don't want to root
if
my belief in the Gita anything mythical.
I mean, if I recall, I want to say, and correct me, I know that Hinduism, I want to say, is between, I want to say around 4,000, give or take 1,000 years old. But I could absolutely be wrong on that. I'm going to say 4 to 6 to be safe. But my point is that no matter how old these religions are, Homo sapiens, we have been around in our modern form for about 200,000 years. Do we think that any of these religions really matter and have a bearing on reality or explaining the world around us? Is one more valid than the other just because it's older? I think that like spirituality
not
is
that.
important in the sense that like it gives us community and, you know, helps us make sense of the world to some degree.
Yeah.
But as far as like diving
Community is not
into
a part of
the thousands of religions that exist, what's more likely that, oh, the Abrahamic one is wrong, but all these ones that came before that, I'm sure, are right.
But if
I
you
just,
knew anything about them, you might understand that what I'm speaking about, yeah, the Santana tradition is focused around a singular practice, and that is holy name meditation on the breath. Holy name meditation on the breath. I don't like to use the term holy name meditation, but sorry, Christians don't know what I'm talking about unless I use that term. To also use mindfulness or breathing meditation. It has demonstrated scientific effects of elevating you up Maslow's pyramid so that despite your actual state of need or development, you can have maturity insights that are technically beyond your state of development for a period of time through that practice. The Sant Mat tradition is utterly focused on the practice of the meditation as the entirety of the religion. There's no dogma. Or I should say, there's a big tradition of challenging and then defeating dogmas as a dogma. Many-sidedness is celebrated, you know?
yeah, I mean, we do know that there are very beneficial things to mindfulness and breathing, and I do agree that it's important to do things to unite the mind and body through mindfulness and movement. But once again, even so,
Study of consciousness. It has nothing to do with mind-body duality. It's a study of consciousness, just like the students of consciousness. Okay, you know how Sam Harris is. It's a bad example because he's already big into mindfulness meditation. But he does this little exercise of just the beginning of mindfulness meditation to get you to see that it's about the perceptual eye. The perceptual eye, the aesthetic and Advaita Vedanta philosophy as the perceptual eye becomes the best model for the quality experience of consciousness that we have. Not to say that orchestrated quantum reduction consciousness is Advaita Vedanta. It's not. It's physics. But it is our best current theory for qualia and, if you will, a quantum processing soul.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. You spoke way over my head just then. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I was gonna say you're speaking very quickly and very quietly.
And I'm glad that you're passionate about it. I really am, and that you found something that you like to think and talk deeply about. Unfortunately, a lot of this is going well over me because I don't really have that foundation. And to me, you have to go way back. And Genevieve, I hope that we can open up a conversation about this because I have no idea what it even means to be spiritual, be connected to a spiritual sense. I would not describe myself as having a relationship with anything that cannot also describe to you what relationship I have with it. Do I technically have a relationship with hand sanitizer? Yes. I just wouldn't have used the word relationship to describe it. So you got to take me all the way back there to what it even means for something to be personal. So I respectfully, and I mean this kindly,
yes.
I got to step back from this conversation because I am so far behind. I have nothing meaningful to contribute. With the asterisk that Genevieve, sometime we're gonna have to talk about what exactly it means for something to be a spiritual need or fulfilling a spiritual purpose, and how exactly that's any different from if I'm just breathing and thinking.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about that. And Don, just like Puck said, we are. Yeah, you kind of lost us there. I am very happy that you are so passionate about it, but we are almost out of time, so I am going to let you go. And
I appreciate it, though.
I
I have a lot to learn. So I'm not like disregarding anything you've said. I want to look into this Vedic third eye stuff. But was it third eye or center eye or eye? What was it? I forget already.
There's another eye involved somewhere.
There's another.
I never brought up it.
I
never brought up any Anjana chakra business.
Okay, so like I said, I'm way behind. So if you want to find me on Twitter, DM me and send me some like the baseline source material because you gotta go way back for me, and I apologize for being so far behind.
Barney style.
No, it's the modern. It's modern. Yeah. There's Advaita Vedanta philosophers in New York right now.
That's great. Puck it down to my level.
Yeah, that's fine. That it's modern. That doesn't mean we're gonna
explain it like I'm a chunk of rubber. So.
Yeah, you're good. And Don, so just like Puck said, DM him, reach out to us too. We're here. So let's talk about this another time. I am gonna let you go. So thank you again for calling.
When I was deconstructing, there was a very brief period where like I looked into like Buddhism and other spiritual practices, and because when you deconstruct, you go through this existential crisis, and you're like, okay, well then who am I? What do I believe? What's there's almost a void that you're trying to fill, and then once you realize, no, like this is my own experience, I was just like, wait, I'm good. I don't need to add anything to what I'm experiencing. Like I'm living life. I'm enjoying things. I don't feel a void. I don't need to add anything to what's going on here. So I just was like, I guess I'm an atheist, but some people do feel like feel the need to fill that void with like some sort of spiritual-ish practice, meditation, whatever. And if that's the path you have to take to cope, then go for it. I'm not going to shame you for it. But that's just not where I landed.
I love ending a show this way, where there's more conversation to be had after than this is good. I like using this as a springboard to have more conversations instead of a funnel. It's like, okay, this is where we have to end here. So I hope I get to talk to both of you more in the future. It was a genuine honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to get the three of us together again too, to continue this conversation, because I mean, yeah, there's so much to be said.
We need more blue-haired atheists out there, right?
Yeah, my hair used to be pink. It would have been a nice dichotomy, but
my hair was every color under the sun when I was a teenager. But Puck, I'd love to invite you on my show one of these weeks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have a show, so I can't invite you anywhere. But let's keep these conversations going.
Yeah,
absolutely. And for anybody who's listening, thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Just like Puck has been so kind to reiterate tonight, we would not be here if it weren't for you. Let's do this. It'd be cool if we could like make it all work together. Let's.
I don't know how to.
And then you got it. And then
somewhere
and then
I don't know where I am
say,
relative to you. So
you got it. And then Ricky.
We tried. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, I was gonna make a heart across the panel, but that's just way too complicated. We're good.
I need to on this side. I don't know. We're lost.
Long story short, if anybody who's watching wants to continue the conversation with either of you guys, where can we find you?
Your list is longer, so you go first.
Yeah, y'all know me. Y'all know me. I'm on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. I have a Discord and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know this existed, but apparently somebody had found my link tree and has been generously linking it in chat. So the most likely place you're going to find me is on Twitter, where I talk mostly about video games, but whatever, I'll talk to anybody about anything. So please continue these conversations, especially if you can talk to me about what it means for something to be spiritual and why that's important.
I super need to find you on Twitter. If you talk about video games, then I need to find you.
What the puck and then the number 0, because 0 looks like a hockey puck.
I love it. And yeah, I mean, you guys know where to find me. I'll be back next week.
I'm
also on TikTok. I do need to get on the Twitter train though. I think I have a Twitter that I started like 10 years ago and then like tweeted one thing in 2011 and never touched it again. So
I like Twitter because it's so low maintenance. Like it's not like TikTok or Instagram. It's so easy to maintain a presence on Twitter.
Yeah, just type 200 characters. You're good.
Cool. Yeah. You convinced me. Well, anyways, thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you both for being here. Puck, it's so nice to get to know you, and I'm excited to continue this conversation with my new friend.
Likewise.
Anywho, y'all, that is our show, and we will see you all next week. Thank you.